Okay, so a continuation of the video on, I want to say Wednesday, earlier in the week in any case, which wasn't really supposed to have a continuation, but yet here we are. So hopefully the internet will play nicer and I'll be able to show the remaining things that I had wanted to show. On the plus side, clearing up a couple of slots makes it a lot easier to deal with some of these things. So to that end, we can actually go around and poke with some things. So to begin with, might as well talk about the vehicle that's currently in the garage. So this is my current, I guess you could say, daily driver. As has been mentioned by me a couple of times before, I'm basically going through all the weapon trials in the game, trying to be familiarized and show some degree of mastery with every category and tier of weapon by going through and completing all the trials. So I've completed everything other than 6 of the relic weapon trials, and the current one I'm working on is the relic cannons challenge. Although why they use the tier legend to describe relic and hero to describe legend, I don't know, but in any case, that's what I'm currently working on. So I completed about half of it with the Typhoon, and now I'm using the Mastodon, as was explained priorly in the week. So this is my build with it. These are the stats and parts. So I ended up kind of lucking out in a sense that the Harpy has been a super popular and useful cabin for a very long time due to its perks on top of its stats, but it's an incredibly heavy cabin to begin with without much mass limit. So I fused this bad boy about 2 years ago during, I think, the first guaranteed upgrade Christmas event. Might be wrong about that, might be misremembering, but in any case, I've had it since, so it's very convenient for this, which, despite being kind of meta-slavey, is, in my opinion, arguably the best perk synergy with the Mastodon, which is that it heats up parts in a double shot volley. Now, a very interesting side note is that it's weird to me that it shoots a volley and a single shot with the same amount of ammunition. So if you shoot once, it takes 1 shot. If you hold the fire, it takes 1 shot of the ammo counter there at the bottom. So I feel like, for if nothing else other than balance reasons, it should probably take 2 shots, and then maybe they could tweak it a little bit as a result. But in any case, that's not the route they've gone. But in any case, me having a mass Harpy makes this build a bit more usable, since I knew I wanted to use it with the Mastodon anyway, and the thing is an absolute chonker. So using the combination of those 2 parts, I kind of made the build around that. So pretty straightforward. I knew that I'd need more mass, and I'd have an energy point to spare since I'm not using a generator with this. So I went with the Geagle. The Geagle lets the Harpy hit 100 kph, so I might as well use the parts that let me hit 100 kph, which is 6 Omnis. And then I just threw out a bunch of other utility parts, so Doppler, flywheel, averter. I was poking around with using the MMRA as well, but I tend to get focused pretty frequently, so having a persistent 30% damage resistance, I think, is more useful than a off and on 50%, but I haven't really done the head-to-head math. I'm still playing around with the build, getting used to it, especially the projectile properties of the Mastodon, which are rather unique. So yeah, pretty straightforward. Me just being a heavy armor simp as per usual, and not really using a whole lot of light parts, which also simplifies the build both for the armoring and the amount of parts I need total. And then I'll show the undercarriage as well. So I have a averter connected to the Mastodon and the cabin, as well as the modules beside it, because really, why not? Radio and iris. But I suppose I don't actually even need the radio since I have a Doppler, but I can't shove that up, unfortunately, to protect those, so that doesn't really matter. And then I have a couple of ammo boxes underneath. Honestly, I might also get rid of one of these because I don't ever get through all of the ammo anyway. But like the footprint of this kind of works out since it's 8 wide and the Doppler plus the flywheel is only a 7x4. And I have a gap here anyway due to the length of the cabin and the cap can behind it. So I don't know. Might also end up changing the cap can around. Bang Shield, who this video is kind of partially dedicated towards anyway, since these are the builds I didn't get to in the other video, and thus are the builds that I was explicitly making or discussing for his sake in the conversations we had with it, was poking around with the heating values of things, and apparently the Mastodon only heats by 35% for one shot. So with it having a long enough reload time for a single one of them that the heating wears away before I can fire and re-up the heat, arguably might be better off using a trombone and then just focusing on single shot, or still using the double shot, but at least guaranteeing 100% heat. I don't know. Then for decor, I just was lazy and did the 5x pump balloons. So this is something that I discussed in the Operation Armor video, which is that if you want to hit the maximum reputation bonus, which is 25%, the most efficient way to do that, assuming you don't care about power score, is going to be using 5 pump balloons, because they are, as you can see here, there aren't any legendary parts that are going to be less power score. Each legendary decor gives 5% reputation, so 5 parts for 5% each is the minimum you need to spend. The lowest a legendary part can be is 26 power score and 2 mass. So I suppose you could swap out the pump balloons for these LEDs if you wanted, but in any case, the 5x 26 power score and 5x 2 mass is the least resources, I guess you'd say, that you can take away from the actual core component parts of the build, and still reach that reputation bonus, which arguably I know a lot of people just say fuck it and get rid of them. So I guess to that extent too, like I did have them all on the Rift there just so I can get them off, but honestly, with the knowledge that the LEDs accomplish the same thing, is that going to block the cap can? Yes, because it's not a 2x2 size like I thought it was. Funny that. Also thought you were going to be able to turn it off with the headlights, but no. So, look at that. Even in the video where I'm talking about it, there's room to improve. So I'll just leave it there for now, in any case. But just, yeah, me getting the reputation gain without actually having to go to the effort of putting parts on that'll work, that won't put me over mass, because as you can see, we're incredibly close to it currently. So, yeah, as far as performance, I mean, I was just dual queuing with Bang Shield last hour. So, I mean, pretty straightforward. I mean, it gets slapped around by the Cyclone Spiders, but so does fucking everything else in the game currently. So, hardly shocking. And I don't have fuel on the build, mostly because I don't even know where I'd stick it, but might end up reincorporating it after, or swapping to the neutrino module. I don't know. I'll have to see. I did really like, it's about the build I'm talking about that I already deleted, but in the other video when I was talking about the Typhoon, I did like having the neutrino where it was, because it let me aim directly down on top of the barrel of the weapon. But the problem with that is also if they deal damage to this and it ends up sparking or having the like black smoke, it'll disrupt this view a lot. And to be fair, you you're still going to have the same issue with the iris, but it's a little bit further up, so it's a little bit less impacted by it, and you shouldn't be sniping in theory with the Mastodon anyway, but I find that's what I got to do a lot, just because, again, everybody in CQC wants to beat up my build, which, again, is kind of fair for the sake of it being a fucking Mastodon, but it's also a single weapon build, so if I lose that, I'm in trouble. So, at least it's quite beefy to begin with. Then I did have the Grizzly co-driver originally. I swapped to Outland because I felt like it synergized more specifically with the Mastodon, but again, it might be something that I swap back to, depending on how she goes performance-wise. So that's currently what's in the blueprint slot. The other one that I had made and was using directly before it was, actually, come to think of it, I know there's a couple of other builds I wanted to go back over on here. So what we can do is clear up a couple of slots by talking about the Bronze Bomber specifically, even though this isn't going to be like a video dedicated towards it. But in any case, this was my first iteration, or well, not the first, but my first last iteration before I reworked it, I guess you could say, where I was still running the same setup that the original user, which is Psystorm, did, which is the 4 Shiv wheels and the 2 twin wheels. But I found that it kind of was miserable to accelerate when you're using that much power drain for the wheels. And then I also wanted to play around with, like I mentioned earlier, running 4 of the blast-off boosters instead. I ended up moving away from that. So my end results haven't been a whole lot different, but in any case, I still love the sleekness of this and the blending of the front to the sides. The little areas here directly in front of the side guards are a bit rough, but there's only so much you can do when you have this weapon, which is 9 long, and most of the armors fit the power of 2, especially because, very annoyingly, it looks like you should be able to move this back 1 pip so that it's directly overhanging the cabin, but even if I clear everything out of the way here, that is very much not the case, which is fairly annoying because I really do feel like it should, and it would make doing the armoring underneath a little bit easier as well, because you wouldn't have this like weird space gap on the bottom. But in any case, they don't let you do that, so that is not an option. For what I have currently, very similar premise still as the other one, except we kind of pushed the sides out a bit more. We ended up moving the invisibility module up above because beforehand we were hiding it kind of back here. I guess it will make more sense if I show the undercarriage for this. There we go. So we have very minimal frames here and multiple very explosive components, which really runs the risk of deframing / blowing up the entire build if you take any sort of damage on the undercarriage at all, primarily via, flames, incinerators. But I ran the cheetah engine to allow us to get our cloak back faster, giving us a max speed of the speed cap of 120, which was more relevant before they changed all the speeds of things again, and then have since touched it a couple more times. And now our current setup kind of outsources the fuel to the back. Is a little bit wider in order to probably if I remember that. That almost shows. It gives us a little bit more space underneath this way. Which, I mean, shocker, you remove things from underneath and you move them elsewhere and then you have more room underneath. but this lets us fit a few more high durability parts surrounding those explosive modules. And then this specifically has a large enough footprint of 6x4 around the gas gen that you can actually swap out and also fit the Thor or PU charge if you want to change energy accordingly. So then we're also swapping to the hot red for this. We super originally had been hot red because we didn't need the speed boost, but then they changed all the cabin speeds and then ran the cheetah, so then you'd also have the cloak faster. But the thing is, like, as much as it is very much a hit and run build, you don't actually need the cloak as frequently as that, unless you're actively running away from things after every single volley, which is super annoying and super slow. And feels significantly less effective. So the other consideration with it being the hot red is in conjunction with the buggy wheels, which actually give us closer to the amount of tonnage we actually need for this build. We can actually still activate the perk while boosting backwards, which isn't exactly a make or break for functionality, but it does mean that if we do need to back away from an enemy, or if we do get stuck somewhere, we can actually still be combat viable somewhat and deal damage. So kind of two different flavors of the same idea. I don't know if I'd be able to say for sure one is any more effective than the other, but at least this is the route I was sort of moving along. So finally then, the V10, kind of as I was alluding to, swaps out the gas gen for a Thor, loses the fuel entirely due to mass and power score concerns, reblends the side armor back to how I originally had it, and gives us an additional energy point, which in our case we can use on an averter for boosting both the durability of the weapon, which again as a single weapon build is fairly important, as well as the cabin itself. In theory, you could possibly get an Omamori under there and just have it boosting the weapon instead of weapon and cabin, but it would require a lot of framing reworks I didn't particularly care for. So in any case, this is the current final state of it, as it were. And who knows, it might get revisited again in the future. The biggest thing is that this is mostly a for fun build rather than like a super hyper effective thing, and as a result of its power score being where it is, it's not even something that you can take into a lot of PvP, because at above 10,000 you're starting to fight like the 14 to 16,000s as well, so you're dealing with things like scorpions and huge hover spider builds. So, kind of falls off for effectiveness there. I did use the V9 a couple of times with the fuel tanks removed for clan confrontation at sub 9,000, so I might end up maybe keeping it around for that, but the actual build iteration, I think for the time being, is kind of concluded with it being at 10. So now that I actually have this all in the video, I can get rid of these other ones, well, this single other one. Which gives me a slot to move some stuff around. So we'll throw the V10 on the exhibition, unless it gets angry about the part being a different one, but hopefully not. Yeah, of course it does. So now I get to play the game of, does me saving over the blueprint cause it to erase my build history and thus make it harder for me to go back? No. Excellent. So we'll toss this up on the exhibition. So I can delete this slot as well. And then we can store this one in and rename it at some other point. So for other builds in this list that I wanted to specifically go over, I can also talk about the one that was priorly in my garage for the other video. So this, I don't quite know if it will be in its final iteration either. In any case, it was taking a concept that I had explored priorly with running the master cabin and harvesters, which is to have regenerating ram resistant front style melee, because the master's power nodes do not actually lend itself to having multiple harvesters on the front and being buffed by them unless you run them vertically, which is a huge pain, and I did explore in the other video, or running them sideways, which is also a huge pain, and I explored in another video. So I think Master is something I'll poke around with again for the sake of trying out the Astraeus for their current state, but in any case, the Chronos is a lot more usable, because not only is it a faster way to charge via being directly close to enemies we are killing, which is kind of up the alley of melee builds, but also has 2 pips vertically stacked, allowing us to have a top and bottom harvester. So you do have to deal with, of course, all the shenanigans of having a asymmetrical cabin, and it being a fast cabin, so less mass, less durability, and also being a higher power score, but it being a light cabin actually, I think, synergizes with the concept of a melee build a lot better, because we don't need the cheetah as much. We can hit the speed cap by just running the hot red engine. And of course, higher speeds equals higher ramming damage, although that does also, on the other hand, necessitate more healing. So this is the result of me doing that, especially because I noticed something interesting. Because the width of the harvesters is 6 wide, and the cabin itself is 6 wide, but you only need to touch each of the pips once, or rather, only one pin needs to be touching the entirety of the harvester. You can actually have a averter placed sideways, buffing not only the cabin, but also both harvesters attached to it. So this allows us to have the persistent 30% damage reduction on the harvesters, which, like I said, is more preferable to the Omamori, especially for the sake of us ramming things with it. Buffs the cabin as well as an added little benefit. Some people will explicitly refrain from having an Omamori also buff the cabin because the health pool of 400 damage negated is shared between all parts, and you want to specifically keep the weapons alive with some of those builds, whereas this, it doesn't matter. Having an additional 30% on as many other things as you can touch is just icing. And then it also has the little hump of the symmetrical mesh sort of fit better in the center of the build. So even though I'm not explicitly using these top pins for boosting or healing anything, it looks, I think, a bit better. Also sort of the same conclusion you come to a lot when you're using the Deadman cabin, where if you just purposefully offset it and then put pseudo cabin parts or armor that looks like it's almost part of the cabin on the other side to even it out, you can kind of make it look like a better, more symmetrical build. In any case, at Bang Shield's behest and suggestion, also using the Tormentor alongside the Harvesters, of course, now that they don't require a flamethrower or debuffing weapon like Spark in order to deal damage, or rather to activate the perk to deal even more damage. And then running your standard menagerie of parts for boosting the effectiveness of aforementioned parts. So we have a cheetah, which again, it's not required because we can already hit 120 kph without it, but does let us get those faster boosts on other items, as well as not requiring, or rather benefiting at all from the increased rotation speed of the oppressor. Having a Doppler, cloak, and then the Bigfoot wheels to boost the charging of the cheetah, which boosts the charging of the chameleon and tormentor. And then also in this case, because I just decided why not see what max energy looks like, I use the Thor rather than a PU charge, so that also lets us use a Aegis. So that means if we do need to disengage from a fight, we can get our ass protected, especially because, again, all things considered, this is a fairly low durability build. If somebody does shoot you in the butt a little bit, it's pretty easy to reach these important modules. And there isn't a whole lot of other places you can stash these around the build, so having that sort of added protection is very useful. The entire gameplay point of this build being that you can hopefully cloak in, get a pick off of a enemy. Normally you can guarantee at least one is off on their own at the beginning of the match. So if you can get them, even if it takes you alongside a couple of teammates, it's fine. And then being able to heal off of the corpse, which currently isn't showing here because we're in the garage. But being able to heal off of that corpse, and actually it seems like if you have enough durability left on these items, you can basically indefinitely heal, which to a certain extent means you can just sit and get shot at. Obviously there's not real much benefit to it, but it does also mean that as long as you are near a corpse when engaging another target, you can effectively regenerate your weapons while you're losing durability by chewing on somebody. So for instance, if we cause this to be a corpse, then even if we are losing durability on grinding, so I'm too far away in this case from the looks of it, but we can still deal damage and regenerate it. So pretty useful, pretty interesting concept in my eyes. Like I said, I think a better use of the power nodes for repairing, as well as the increased speed of being a fast cabin instead of the master, which is now a medium cabin, even though it did start off as a light cabin. So I think we could probably stand to do a couple of battles. I don't have any clips of this. I do have a couple of clips of the bronze bomber, quote unquote, though I've shown it before. And then I have another few clips of some of the other builds, but I don't think I have any of these, so I will play a couple matches to kind of show it. Though at the same time, the reason I don't have clips is because it's the sort of thing, like I mentioned with the Thyrsus build, where it's quite effective in a longer attrition format for a match, which means it's difficult to clip all of those things when I have the 2-minute limit on the game, other than if I drop down the quality from 2K HD or 2K HD to regular, which I don't really care to do, and then I'd also have to edit the clips down again, as opposed to just as is, where I can cap it for 2 minutes. So we can try this. Although generally I don't go against 16,000s on a very open, very long range map, and I'm speaking in game again because the Xbox does that via the app. Sorry guys. There we go. I was just being lazy with the balloons at the back again, as per the other build. So, might be a habit now that I get into, now that I actually have the 5 pump balloons. Obviously a lot harder to do that when you don't. Also concerned with the enemies pushing the way they are. In any case, if I can get the... I didn't even need to get the kill, great. But I can use that to repair my parts. And then in theory do some rinse and repeating. Although we might not even need to if we just straight up win this match as is. Of course, I can't do anything about me missing wheels, unfortunately, and the Bigfoots are enormous and stick out to the side, but do what you can, and those aren't one of the things I can do anything about, I'm afraid. My builds are also going to be a poor example of this build at winning at attrition, since obviously they are very CQC, deal a lot more area damage than I do, but that's what the teammates are for. So now there then. Still worried about the state of things with me not being healed yet. But we'll try and get some charge back. Interestingly, you can also do it while invisible. So you can see the charge is no longer going down, so I know all the parts are healed. At least I think. Who knows whether or not that's actually the case. And then I can kind of keep making those attacks over and over as long as they don't take off anything important. Namely, more wheels, though. It's really hard to add armor to those. And I don't really have enough mass to get away with adding another pair of wheels in the center like I'd normally do to increase stability. I also have a zero effective way of dealing with hovers unless I get lucky on the ram. Yeah, so this match isn't looking like it's going to be going in my favor. Because that dude has too many wheels on the side. So it's effectively a 1v3 right now. And the build's good, but it ain't that good. Especially when they're 16,000 power score. I basically got a duplicate lobby for my team, which is interesting and doesn't exactly fill me with confidence, but I also was distracted and almost just drove into the pit myself, so that probably wouldn't have done it either. I don't think they're going to let me sneak. Ooh, nice. So here's hoping I can get the jump on this person. Getting the jump just by itself isn't enough to kill him, but hopefully I can do both. Especially when I get juicy parts like that. And then I can heal up while I continue marching on him. Interesting to know, I don't know if this is something they explicitly decide to be a counter, but if somebody suicides, their corpse doesn't remain unless they don't serve as an obstacle, nor as something you can get the charge off of. That wasn't very good. I lost most of my build. So that is one of the counters to a build like this, although you don't really see a whole lot of it, so. Yeah, so for instance, that dude did not suicide, so I get my hopefully full heal off of it, depending on how much the other guys get upset with me. It's also interesting because I don't really know what determines whether or not I get to build the charge sometimes. So you saw that it was turned off but then still had a delay, which it doesn't mention in the perk description at all. So I don't know. Also really sucks when the first thing they take out is my cloaking, because of course that's a big part of the effectiveness of this build. Probably also a terrible fight to pick, but I'm kind of betting on him. Yeah, there we go. Not having enough durability to outlast. Though, to be fair, they didn't do a bad job. Like, he still got one of my harvesters. I'm probably going to lose the Cyclone Spider, because that's just kind of what they do, but... So if I played that a bit more cleverly, I probably would have camped on one of the corpses and then made sure that I was continuing to heal in the meantime. But I think there should still be a win for us depending on how bad these guys whiff it. But I mean, they're both. Yeah, there we go. So, yeah, I got a shit ton of points in this. We'll do another lobby, see if we maybe get a better map. But I think that was a pretty good display of the build and its potential effectiveness, as well as, you know, how I could have done it better. But yeah, and then I colored it kind of like a shark, because I figured we have teeth and they regenerate, so it kind of checks out, but I don't really know what I'd explicitly name it, because Mastodon is already, you know, its own thing, so Megalodon might be kind of confusing with it, and I don't know if there's any sharks that are very explicitly about regenerating teeth. I think that's just a thing a lot of them have. And I might need to keep my hubris in check for safe scumming on Baldur's Gate, but I don't think it's bad enough that I need to name this Great White and pretend it's like top tier build or anything, so I don't know. It's definitely a better map for this though. Oh, until I do that, that's not good. That's very not good. Yeah, that's me being dead. Oh, he even has a single porcupine. Damn. Well, we might have to do another match. Because the story of this one was just me getting cucked immediately. By everything and everyone, yeah. Alright, so maybe another one where we actually meet the minimum score threshold. And don't mind if I do scoop up a second one in the meantime, because it's going to be a while until I get these, if at all. So, there, oh well, there's only 5 days left, huh? So how far behind am I on challenges? Only one. But I don't have that yet. And this is from a prior battle pass. This isn't from here. So I'd still get one from the battle pass itself. So another cool thing you can kind of see at the back there, you can actually fully wrap partisan fenders, both normal and then like flipped upside down around Bigfoot wheel bases. So that's pretty cool. I didn't realize that was a thing, but now I know. But the biggest thing is just that it's really, really hard to armor the wheels themselves up. So I don't know if I end up staying with them, especially because obviously they stick out, and that's even with me running harvesters. It's not like I can really add a whole lot more to them. Hey buddy, thanks for the kill, thanks for the charge. There we go, there's that ambush predator playstyle working out for us. No idea what your build is, but I'll chew through it as well. I see. Oh, we don't like that. He also doesn't like it, but then still will let me chew on the front half of his build. So now, I don't know the fuck that was. Just exploded. But in theory, give me a nice corpse. Well, okay. Not quite a corpse yet, but dealing damage is cool. Get me a corpse so I can recharge my healing. It's kind of hard to tell how damaged these things are, but like I said, as long as the charge is still decreasing when I use it, I know that there's some healing to do. Even better when we get double corpses like this. So it seems to be okay, but I don't know if it's just the healing outpacing it. Yeah, see, because now it's still draining. And I know with the proposed changes, they're making it so it doesn't drain if it doesn't have anything to heal, which seems to indicate that it currently does drain even if it's not healing anything, so I don't know. Should be better though, is what I'm getting at. Yeah, Tormentor definitely does work, especially because it is incredibly hard to get 7 seconds of consecutive charge built up with the Harvester without people, you know, breaking away for more than a second. That was an excellent match. Not only because I won and got a bunch of points, but because they actually, like, put up a fight and just didn't just get steamrolled like half the matches nowadays. I don't think triple vulture in a mine charging into the middle of the map is exactly a good strategy, but in any case, so that is that build. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not really happy with the current chameleon placement, but again, I don't really know how else I'd put it where it's not in the way. Like underneath, we're obviously pretty busy as well. Bunch of explodey parts, but I'm generally not sitting on fire. If people shoot at me, they shoot at the top section. So normally I either die or get the fuel. There's not generally a whole lot of wins where it's win but no fuel. But I mean, obviously that's dependent on how much the team can clutch up with me being dead. So yeah, I think that's a pretty good view of that build. Now we can also show you what I was talking about with the coupled build I made with Regan. So we will send you to the Leviathan slot and hope that it doesn't overwrite the history, but if so, it's kind of a shitty Leviathan, so whatever, I can just make another one. Oh, you can't have rifts on Leviathans, eh? So what happens if you test drive? Oh, it doesn't get angry. It probably just prevents me from deploying into matches. That's fine. So I can kind of show you what I mean with the problem. So it was just me trying to be cheeky, and instead of actually using a rift module, maintain the ability to rotate as an actual trailer by having us use the Omamori's shape as an L hook. But as per usual, it's very stubborn with friendly builds about how much room you actually have and how much clearance you need on the sides. So even if I do this way so I can shoot off the rift, or not. There we go. Yeah, so you can see I can't pull them because they have 6 Omnis on the ground, and that's enough traction that you, like, can't move. And if you ever can move, it's barely. And, like, this isn't even an issue where it's, like, because I'm trying to pull an enemy or anything. It's just, like, this is just how the game traction and weight currently works. So I don't know if this is going to be affected by the mass changes where they're saying, like, maybe the current issue is I'm, according to the game, wedging them, and thus I am taking the full weight of them on their build on top of my build. But obviously this is not usable at all. And requiring them to be, like, fully gassing it in order to go forward kind of works as a workaround, but is still not ideal because it means if I need to turn or stop or anything, I need to communicate that fast enough for them to do likewise. So yeah, plus honestly, 4 Fat Man at 10,000 power score is just not good. So at least in how I have them built now, even though they look pretty slick, effectiveness wise it's kind of not there. So yeah, I don't know, might be better if I somehow reversed it so that I was the part that was on top of the other one and then was the mobility, or again with the changes where hopefully I don't lose any mass or power as a result of all of their movement parts staying on the ground. But that's not anything that has actually come out yet or is even guaranteed to stay the same. So in the meantime, it's just kind of a miserable experience. Yeah, so even if I try and get some momentum here. Obviously it's kind of hard with them hooked into the butt. Yeah, well, and I guess in this case it's not playing nice with the Memorial either. And that's probably due to it being a hostile build. It was connecting nicer and letting me drive forward when it was a friendly, but it's also something we played around with for like, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours and couldn't really get it to work any better. And anything more than this obviously would require a complete rebuild. So the both of them for builds are pretty dead currently, even though, like I said, they're pretty interesting. So like as far as the actual function of it, got the engine on the front, make it look like obviously more of a semi. And then we've got our modules hiding underneath the weapons alongside some elbows for connecting them, and our ammo and further modules underneath here. So as a front build, pretty straightforward. Alright, so it looks like I can't revert the build history for Leviathan, but whatever, not a big deal. In any case, that was me just silently showing the trailer off. I do really like how I managed to fit everything in and make it look good, but again, function-wise, it's not there, so shelved for the time being, and I guess I'm going to have to build another Leviathan. So as far as the last build, and I haven't gone over yet because I think that's all the details for the rest of these I wanted to go through. This is currently the state of the helicarrier. So this is designed to be a fusion build aircraft. So the plan is to get 4 more hummingbirds and slap them directly underneath, and then swap out the weapons for starfalls, and then have somebody fuse into the front when I have those extra pieces for tonnage and don't need to display the footprint of the build with these parts. I can then move them onto the roof and armor that up, since obviously I have a bunch of available mass. And then potentially also have somebody clip onto the back, just because I don't think I have enough mass or parts limit to flush out the back, even though I know I can do the middle for sure. If the front is taken up by another build, I don't think I'll be able to also do the back, so I might need another build there. But as it stands, with Sky Raiders, we have a single Starfall, but we aren't going to have enough bearings to get that second one for quite a while. So that does complicate the development of this a little bit. We'll probably iterate on it some more. As far as this bottom, I've reworked it 4 or 5 times. I think the current state is what I like, with having the frames be at the very bottom. So this lets me extend the armor up on the sides a little bit and cover the Yokozuna, which is a very tall cabin to begin with. And then, even though like frames do let damage through, they're pretty tanky, and I don't need the frames themselves for holding anything, since rotors can be attached anywhere on the build. So I think it should be okay. I can always swap these out for armor as needed, but I figure, I mean, if they soak up the damage, let a little through, probably better than being there, gone, and then the thing behind it taking full damage. But we'll have to see. It's also nice because it obviously obfuscates the parts a little bit better than if they just shot the parts off. So yeah, the elbows are just being where the hummingbirds would clip in. Unfortunately, there isn't another option for like a 4x3x1 part that would fit there better, that would be more durable. So I mean, that size part specifically is already extremely limited. So the one that comes to mind immediately, there might be others, but is the eastern or western fronts. But I only have 2 of them, one of each. And I guess it would go on this side because of the location of the pips. And they have significantly less durability. So 53 compared to an effective durability of 290. So even though they might fit a little bit better and be less annoying for coupling, way less durable. Then additionally, the other concern is how weapon placement is going to work, because if I have 2 stack of hummingbirds at the front, obviously I can't shoot straight forward between them. So I could shoot down pretty easily, which is what I do in the... Also swap the garage back now that we don't need to show the fusion build, so I don't need multiple vehicles that I control. Well, I guess I could have done it here anyway, because I'd still have the Leviathan slot. Whatever. Anyway, this is easier for testing aircraft. So this is what I use in the patrol for the daily machine gun wins if that challenge comes up. That's nice because I can aim straight down, no problem, but obviously other players aren't going to allow that. Likewise, shooting straight up isn't exactly a great plan, because it means that they'll be able to hit modules directly with very little protection, even if I do add roof armor. And obviously this also limits my ability to shoot in the directions left to right, although since it automatically follows the camera, that's not too terrible. Though it being such a large build does significantly increase the turn radius. And my ability to place the weapons in other places where they aren't blocked by other things is also questionable. So obviously I can stack these underneath instead, though I would require different mounts than the frames, but they have very limited gun elevation, which while now upside down is effectively gun depression. So I lose the ability to effectively shoot directly underneath me. Though it does give me more ability to shoot to the sides, but again, that's in theory not much of a benefit. And then even if I do keep them on the side and, you know, use a larger equivalent weapon, should, like I said, ideally be the Starfall, which interestingly, they fit in the slot of a single one of these quite nicely because they have a 7x4 footprint with a 1-pin lip. But in case it wouldn't go there because there's the, you know, the hummingbirds. Then we, of course, have the same issue where fairly limited on shooting in the other directions, especially when there is a rotor there for shooting straight ahead. The frames will block my view of shooting straight ahead to begin with anyway. And then there's going to be, it's a coupled build, so there's going to be one or two other people also shooting, so where their gun's going to go. So I was thinking could probably have the fronts be undermounted, because that should have the clearest view of in front and under, since like I said, I'll have issues with that, especially with the frame placement. And then maybe at the back also have under again, but obviously they're not going to be able to aim forward or above very well. So it might be better to have it on top, but if you have it on top, then they won't be able to shoot at the same target as the person underneath unless they're like super pillared up or down, so that they have better angles. So maybe it's just better if the ones on the front and back are maybe on the sides, and then I have mine on the bottom. But like I said, blocks angles pretty well, so I am unsure. That is to be determined. But at the very least, I like the footprint setup of it currently. Like I said, I'm very excited to get some more hummingbirds, but people actually have to sell them to me. And then actually having the front and back built so I can connect with them, so I can get rid of these parts and replace them otherwise to actually, armor and seal up the core of the build. So the plan is basically just to remove everything past the rotors, and then have the other peeps there where they can keep their modules still here in the center closer to the cabins, especially if I end up putting these side by side and squashing them. But I figure this should be okay because it lets me put more side and top armor as is. And yeah, we'll have to see. Like I said, very dependent on actually getting those remaining parts. And then more people who want to spend 3 hours trying to fucking connect builds. So I guess that's the sort of thing too, if I end up deleting more slots, then I'll have the ability to just make all 3 parts myself, especially since they aren't going to need any hummingbirds themselves. But like, the starfalls are probably going to continue being the biggest limiter. So I think that concludes the whole, 4 builds I still need to talk about before the internet was flaking out the other day. And then, the 2 or 3 dozen builds I need to update for actual usability, but it's not an immediate concern in any case, so that should be good. Oh, you know what? Actually, there was one more thing I want to talk about. Since we're talking about cheeky item placements anyway, with some of these builds, namely the averter on the Kronos, there is an option which I haven't seen anyone do. I'm not saying it's a good idea, but I mentioned it to Bang Shield, and I've checked the exhibition 2 or 3 times, but I haven't seen it. So I don't think people have put 2 and 2 together yet. Maybe I'm wrong and that's been changed. Guess not. So, interestingly, the Athena, well, actually, to begin with, the Machinist is like, I'm not going to say it's a trash tier cabin, but I will say that, nobody uses it. And that's for a pretty decent reason, especially compared directly to its other option at that tier. But it's interesting because it predates the implementation of power nodes, so its perk is specific to connecting anywhere on it. And it also has a nook at the back, a couple of nooks. Furthermore, the pips for connecting weapons are generally on the bottom exclusively. But some, like the fixed angle shotguns or some of the fixed angle cannons, will have pins on the side which give you some fairly unique connection opportunities. Most notably, as I've mentioned before, being able to stick this, or like in the example I was using, a tsunami in between two Goliath tracks and then double stack them one on top of another without them actually connecting anything like an inverter or the cabin, although there's obviously risks of doing that. But there's also one weapon that has additional connection pips, not only on the side, but also as a further second layer on the side. So, the genius being that you could take these two factors and combine them. And again, I'm not saying that the Athena and Machinist build together is like a good combination or anything, but if you did want to have already nigh unstrippable guns that are really good at stripping, you could, I don't have Athena, so I'm going to have to mock this up. You could place the second layer of the Athenas like such, which would place the I just gotta find all the cast iron parts because I never use them. These are all wonky shapes. Should put the first layer like such. So it's a 4x4 and then a 6x6 layer, if I recall correctly. Yeah. 6x6, 4x4. And then you could slap an inverter in there. So you'd have the guns, which are roughly shaped like that, connected directly to the cabin, so they'd have their increased durability, connected to an inverter. You could maybe get away with an Omamori with some clever placement, though I don't think so. Have the damage resistance from that, and then have them protected pretty much wholly behind the cabin itself. So there's an interesting idea for if somebody was feeling experimental with it. Biggest thing is, like, you probably need to make it a spider, and that would block off the weapon angles quite a bit, especially because you really don't have a whole lot of room to move it up any. Depending on the mesh, like, I'm pretty sure it's going to count the 6th pins, because it's just the 1 pin corner cut off, so I don't think it's going to let you push it up this far, which would give you a bit more room. But yeah, just an interesting thought in any case. Likewise, I'm sure that, like I said, if I mess around with the Master and Astreus, I will probably have to rethink how I'm doing connections, because it was different when they had all of the pins on the side. So I'll have to figure out how I'm going to do it. My first thought is make use of the fact that we have pins on the side and back to try and connect to both of them. Something like that, maybe. But I don't know, It's something I'm going to have to play around with quite a bit, because I'm not going to pretend that I'm the only person who had the idea, but I did have the idea when they first came out, and then there's been a bunch of changes since then, so I'll have to see. At the very least, you'll be able to have at least one of them connected to the pins if you do that, and then have both of these elbows repairable as well. But I don't know, I'm gonna have to play around with it a bit. That's not really the purpose of this is a building video. It's talking about the remaining builds. So since this Mastodon is probably gonna take me until the end of the year at the very least to get those remaining patches, I don't know that I'll be making any more builds before the end of the year. So this might be a fully comprehensive final quote-unquote look of what I got for 2023, but we'll see. I have a feeling I'll have to iterate on this build a couple more times, and then maybe mess around with the Sharky Boy as well, but I don't think it's going to be any new builds entirely, just tweaks on ones I've already got, especially getting rid of the super annoying pump balloon spam.